If you've paid much attention to the red letters in the Bible, the words of Jesus, you probably noticed that Jesus taught some pretty radical things. And the kind of things you read and think, can anybody really do that? Are we really supposed to do that? Some of the things that Jesus said are so radically peaceful that it's hard to imagine actually carrying it out the way you feel. Like if somebody slaps you on one cheek, you're supposed to turn the other one and say, could you please slap me on this one too? That's radical peace. Some of the things Jesus said, on the other hand, oh my goodness, they're radically violent. And what do we do with those? I want to give you one of my favorite examples, that radically violent scripture, words of Jesus from Matthew chapter 5:29. So if we want to be Bible believers, we got to take this seriously. We got to figure out how to put this into action. That's where we're going. We got to figure out how to put this into action. So, if your eye, even your good eye, causes you to lust, gouge it out. Throw it away. It's better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your hand, even your stronger hand, causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It's better for you to lose one part of your body than your whole body to be thrown into hell. Oh my goodness. Well, I feel like as a Christian leader, it's my responsibility that we carry out the words of Jesus fully. And that we not be like those compromisers out there, a Muslim extremist terrorist, boy, they live this out. We can't let them outdo us. I mean, that's the competition. We need to figure out and get a system in place here in our church for doing just the kind of thing Jesus is talking about. I'm going to need some volunteers. I'm going to need some eye gougers and some hand choppers. And you know what else the scripture says? Very plainly, I believe it. It says the pastor is supposed to be the equipper of the saints. And I realized this week, if I was going to preach this, and we're really going to start living out the teachings of Jesus, it's going to require equipment. And so I brought along some equipment today that is going to help us put these teachings of Jesus into practice. Now let's just start with the things he actually said, and then we'll follow it a little further. And we need to really get this drilled into our heads and get some things in place about how we're going to handle this. First of all, if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. And so I brought my fire poker, and the only thing is it's not hot. But if you've got any kind of lustful eye, if you'll stay after church, we will heat it up on the gas stove, and we will get you right with the Lord. I mean, after church. If your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. The only thing about that is, what if you only gouge out one eye and you become a peeping Tom with the other eye? Well, no tolerance for that. No. You just be back next Sunday. We'll take care of that. But if you really want to follow this to the logical conclusions, even blind men can lust. So what we need to do is some pretty radical surgery. We can cut off the top of your head and pull out your amygdala. And that right there, you won't lust or do anything else after that. Dadgummit. We'll take care of that. But now Jesus didn't stop there. He said, if your right hand causes you to sin, you need to cut it off. And there's different tools that we could use for this. And I want to make sure I get them all out here and cover everything that I need to cover. As far as right hand causing you to sin, I feel like if I could get Jerry to put his arm right here and Donald hold it, we could get rid of, that's my left, the right one. We could get rid of that. But if I missed the right, if I accidentally did the left one, Jerry, first, don't worry. I would get it. I'd make it right. I'd go ahead and do the right one too. We take care of that. No more sinning for Jerry. Of course, a lot of sins a lot of things that people do are not done directly with the eye or with the hands. What about gossips? What could we do with a gossip? Something the Bible, Jesus didn't specifically mention it in there, but he preached about that, and slander and a whole bunch of other things. And if we want to really take this principle and apply it correctly, I think a pair of pliers and a sharp pocket knife is really all we're going to need. When I was 12, my granddaddy gave me a knife like this, and he said, "Lance, this is the spaying blade. Do you know what that means?" I said, "No, but I've discovered it's the sharpest blade." And maybe like with, who would be a good gossip to start with? Let me see here. Barbara Lewis would be a good one to start with. And what I'm going to need is I need a couple of strong men or women to get her by the tongue, and you hold it out for me, and then we'll get rid of that. But here's the thing. That might work on her, because let me say it this way. There are other ways of gossiping. I mean, what if we cut her tongue out and she still got on her phone and was tweeting and texting things? Well, there's something that can be done for thumbs. This is a war tomahawk. I mean, just thumbs. Just think what a quick, easy thing that would be. Thumbs, gone. But then there's still full computer screens, and she'd have 4 other fingers to type slanderous things on Facebook, and run people down and start all kind of rumors. It's probably going to take more than one chop, wouldn't you say? But now the last thing is the most difficult. This lust thing. Even blind people can lust. And you know, if I were the father of a teenage daughter, the main group of people I'd be concerned about would be teenage boys. And Jesus clearly wants us to do something about these teenage boys that are coming after your teenage girls. And I mean, I can't imagine what would work better than that right there. You know what I'm talking about? Now, we can do this. We can start this program. And we could draw national attention if we did, you know. I mean, we would be on the news, and you know, they say there's no such thing as bad publicity. We could get a lot of publicity, might even get some federal funding with that hook thing for teenage pregnancy control. There's no telling what could come about. Now, I better stop. We could do all that. Or we could try to figure out what Jesus was actually talking about and try to do that instead. So, what was it that Jesus was really getting at? Do I think that he was wanting his followers to engage in mass mutilation? Something about that just has a strange ring of falseness to it. In fact, there's a scripture that I want to bring to your attention. John 10:10. What was Jesus really talking about? Before we read that, well, it's already there. I'll read it. The thief's purpose is to kill, steal, and destroy. That crazy mess I was just doing, you know, that's all about stealing, killing, destroying. Jesus said, my purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. When you think about who it might be that would actually want us to do some of that ridiculous, horrible stuff, does that sound more like Jesus, or does it sound more like the thief? Stealing, killing, destroying. Jesus was a master teacher in every way. One of his special gifts was using very strong, attention-getting metaphors to make his point, to grab hold of you and say, listen, listen, listen. And, that'll grab your attention, But you got to keep listening for what the real message may be. Because what we're talking about there in relation to Jesus, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off, your eye, gouge out. He's not talking about torture and mutilation. Good gracious. There's an image that fits much better, that modern people can understand better than primitive people could have. What he's really talking about is something more akin to surgery. In the ancient world, all the way up through the last 100 years, surgery on a battlefield especially really amounted to amputation. What Jesus is talking about is identifying problems within us, problems in the way we're relating to other people, unhealthy, self-destructive patterns, things we're doing that make life worse for ourselves and others. And most of those are not about fingers and eyeballs. They're about the mind. They're about the heart. I don't think anybody's ever lived very long in this world without developing at least one or two negative ways of thinking, wrong ways of relating to people around us, hurtful ways of operating that are causing us and others a lot of unnecessary pain. And what the gospel is about is removing things that only cause misery for ourselves and others. It's not even getting rid of stuff that makes God mad. I think most of the time, whenever we do stuff that's destructive, mean, cruel, selfish, it's not so much that it makes God mad as it must make God so sad. It's so different than the way we're taught to live. Surgery. Think about surgery. When you were a kid, some of you had an acute appendicitis. I did. Many of you did. My wife and I both had an appendicitis the same year. Yeah. Only mine was done at a small town hospital in Alabama. Hers was done in Akron, Ohio. Her scar is that big, and you can barely see it. Mine looks like I got stabbed with a machete, jagged. But we both got rid of the appendix because why? It was toxic. It was poison. And if we left it there, it would have killed us. The doctor didn't operate. I didn't obviously have the best surgeon, but he did the best he could. And his goal was not to kill me with that knife. It was to save my life. You follow where we're going here? Same thing with gallbladder. Some of you have had heart surgery. Boy, that's a tough one. Open heart surgery is a horrible thing to have to go through. I saw my father do it. Many of you have done it. Very traumatic for the body. And it's not something anybody wants to do. Sometimes, in order to get your life back, sometimes in order to live and be part of your children and grandchildren's life, you have to make tough decisions like that. going through painful things that we'd rather not expose ourselves to, and the purpose is not because we love misery or torment, it's to actually get rid of. And here's the thing, whether it's tonsils, whether it's a bad knee or a hip problem, human nature is, we're pain-avoiding creatures naturally, and most of us won't do any kind of radical work on ourselves or allow anybody else to until, you've heard me say this before, we won't allow anything really powerfully and painfully transformative, because powerful transformation will be in one way or another painful. We won't allow the powerful, painful surgery to happen until the pain of staying the way we are gets so bad that, doggone it, I think I'll take the pain of the surgery and the recovery, because at least that's going to take me somewhere good. I visited with Rodney Bowen the day before he got his hip replacement. And I remember, he was sitting in his chair hurting. I said, are you dreading this thing? Do you wish you didn't have to do this surgery? He said, no. However much it hurts, I don't see how it can be worse than what I've got right now. He was so ready for that, I think it turned out it may have hurt even more after he got it done. But now he's walking, he's moving, he's getting better. He's already back on his tractor, they tell me. And so what we're talking about here really is a Jesus who's all about giving you and me more life, more joy, a better life. He's not out to take. That's unfortunately, one of the most common misconceptions about Christ, the Christian message, is that it's all about taking away the fun stuff. It's all about keeping us from things that might make us happy. And you know what? I don't blame people for getting that idea, because a whole lot of our preaching through the years, and some of mine through the years, has basically communicated that. Following Christ is going to mean getting rid of everything that might be a joy in your life. The reality, nothing could be further from the truth. The truth is, what God is most interested in is your wholeness, your health for you, and that will affect those around you. I got to clarify another thing too. Even though we've made it clear that we're not talking about Jesus who's out to hurt you and take, there's still an idea floating around in some minds, I'm sure. What if I don't cooperate? What if I hang on to whatever it is I don't want to let go of, even though it's making me sick, even though it's making my life a wreck and it's pulling me down? What's God going to do then? You know what God's going to do? If you refuse to cooperate with whatever kind of spiritual or emotional or relationship surgery you may need, you know what God will do if you refuse to cooperate? Love you just as much as if you didn't. Love you just as much as if you did cooperate. He's not waiting for you to cooperate with him so he can start loving you. It's the other way around. It's because he already loves you that God doesn't want to see you continue suffering unnecessarily or pushing that onto somebody else. You know the thing, hurt people Sometimes hurting people may not even admit they have pain. And that's the scariest kind of all, because they're going to be the most hurtful to others. God's interest is giving you life, giving you life. And there are times when whatever it is that needs to be removed, whatever needs therapy, whatever needs to be stretched. We're not just talking about surgery. There's all sorts of ways in the medical profession for helping people besides just surgery. Sometimes what we need is medicine. Sometimes what we need is therapy. Sometimes what we need is just stretching and exercising. Whatever it is that you're needing, whatever it is that would be most appropriate to resolve whatever it is in you that's unhealthy, toxic, and causing unnecessary trouble, that's what we're talking about. And there are times when it's something in your outer world. There are times it may involve something you're involved in, something you're into. Other times it just comes down to something as simple as an attitude of your heart. I am very much a work in progress. I've undergone lots of divine surgeries and emotional surgeries and psychological surgeries, and so I'm on the road. I haven't arrived, but I do know this. We're not after perfection here. You know what we're after? Progress. Do you know the difference? If you're after perfection, you're in the wrong place. Of course, anywhere else you go, you'll be in the wrong place because it's not out there. By the way, when you read in the Bible, be ye perfect, even as I am perfect, that's a mistranslation from Greek that goes back to the early 1600s. The word is actually wholeness. Be whole. Be complete. Be fully the person you were created to be. And as long as there are things in me, in you, that are preventing that, I won't become whole. I won't completely grow into the person God made me to be. For example, for years, I had this mental habit that I just couldn't stop. And that is, if somebody offended me, did something that got under my skin, whether they knew they did it or not, I would get stuck on that in my mind, and I'd go home and I would talk to my wife about it over and over, and I would analyze it and I would replay it, thinking that, I'm just going to keep analyzing this and I'm going to keep repeating this, and after a while it'll resolve itself. Whew. No, it just got bigger, got bigger, and it only made me sick inside, and it stunk up our home. And I'm telling you, there were a couple of times years ago when I was in Muskogee, Oklahoma, I'd have something that was bothering me for a period of months that I, rather than going to somebody and getting some help to get it cut out, so to speak, I was focused on setting things straight, putting somebody in their place, how I'm going to make this right. And that created such a negative energy in my home that on the two different occasions it happened, 2 years apart, both years, my youngest son started acting out in school. He became almost, I won't say impossible, but very difficult for his mother to deal with, and very difficult for me to deal with. And at the time, I didn't catch it, but looking back, I realized even though I wasn't addressing him or thinking about him, somebody very close to him had a poisoned mind, something infected, and it will spread to the people closest to me. And so the longer I go, it doesn't make me enjoy surgeries anymore or painful therapies anymore, but it does get me to where I'm much quicker to submit to one when I realize I need it, so that I don't suffer myself any longer than is necessary or cause anybody else to. You know what else? There are sometimes when the thing that's causing you to sin. You know what sin means? That's another word that has a dark, scary connotation to it, and definitely sin can be very dark. It can be very destructive. But you know what the word sin actually means? It comes from a Roman military term. It has to do with archery, shooting at the target. And some of you know this. The bullseye, there was a bullseye, and then every ring around it was called a sin, S-I-N. There was sin 1 that was closest to the bullseye, and then out from there, sin 2, then sin 3, sin 4. And when the shot was made, the person by the target would holler out, sin 1, or bullseye, sin 2, sin 3. You know, sin is missing the mark. Sin is falling short, as the Bible says, of what you could have been. And that's what all of us do. That's what all of us do. And sometimes, whatever thing that has become a sin in me, that's causing me to just miss it. See, when I was messing up my own son with my negative, angry spirit without knowing it, I was just missing it. I was missing the whole target. There are times, though, when a certain way of operating is appropriate, or at least acceptable, because at a certain stage of your life, it's the best you can do, or it's all you know to do, or it's all you got. And it's not like God's getting mad about that, but what's problematic is if I continue to grow beyond that and I'm still operating the same way I did back there, and now I'm too mature really to be still acting and thinking that way. My little brother, Landry, lives in San Antonio, Texas. He just had his third child, beautiful baby boy. And my brother Landry loved his pacifier when he was a baby. And you know what a pacifier is, okay? He called it his pie, because that's all he could say when he first started trying to talk. I've never seen a kid so attached to a pie as he was. I'll show you another picture. As he got a little older, it got a little more ridiculous. And he turned 2, still had the pie. Turned 3, still had the pie. Turned 4, still had the pie. He was big and strong enough that his little friends would make fun of him. For his pie, he'd get mad and whip them. But he wasn't letting go of that pie. And what was perfectly right on target and acceptable when he was 1.5 or 2 was starting to get kind of ridiculous, and it was starting to cause him problems. And I'll always remember the day we were riding down the road, we were riding down the highway, and my daddy was talking to him about that pie. It was, you talk about a radical surgery. I mean, it's like we thought we were going to have to cut the thing out of the boy's mouth. And you know what he finally did just one day on his own? We were riding down the road. He rolled down the window. Are you old enough to know what I'm talking about? He rolled down the window, took his pie, flung it out. And to my knowledge, he has not slipped back there and picked it up. He might do it in the closet. I don't know. But to my knowledge, he's never gone back to that. If he did, would it be a horrible, evil thing? No, but that might kind of hurt him in the oil business when he's in board meetings making big multi-million-dollar deals, don't you think? Sometimes the thing that needs to be cut away, thrown away, is not some horrible, evil something, though it can be. Sometimes it's just something we've outgrown. Something that used to work and no longer does. Let me ask you this. If you discovered that something you were eating was making you sick, would you stop eating it? Or would you just demand your right to eat whatever you want? Karen Ann Harvey told me just before church today. She gave me a great example of this. She started having these blister-like things in her throat a year or two ago. And finally, through doctor's investigation, exams, figured out that it was hot peppers. Anything hot was causing these blisters. Ask Karen Ann after church, do you still eat hot peppers? She don't eat hot peppers. But I want to ask you, what if you found out something about the way you were thinking? What about if you found out your attitude toward a certain person? Your general attitude and demeanor at work was making you and other people sick. Would you keep chewing on it? Well, that's for you to decide. I can only tell you this. When there's something in us that needs to go, don't try to get rid of it for God's sake, thinking that's going to make him like you more. Do it for your sake and do it for the people you love and the people who have to be around you. And you know, there's a lot of reasons I mentioned that about feeling this pressure. One thing that will make it most difficult for you to make any sort of change, radical change, difficult, painful, adjustment, whatever, is feeling pressured to do so. Like, if I don't do this, God's not going to love me. Or if I don't do this, or if I don't cooperate, nobody's going to like me anymore. Well, negative motivation can sometimes work, but I don't think it has much long-term benefit. Here's something that Anthony DeMello wrote, one of the finest Christian writers I know. He's been dead for 40 years. His work lives on. Here's what he wrote one day. He said, I was a neurotic for years. I was anxious and depressed and selfish. Everyone kept telling me to change. Hear that? So he's got pressure from peers, family, coworkers. I resented them for telling me that. He said, I agreed with them and I wanted to change, but I couldn't, no matter how hard I tried. And what hurt most was that even my best friend kept insisting that I change. I felt powerless. I felt trapped. But then one day, my best friend said to me, wait, Anthony, I got a new message for you. Don't change. Don't change. Don't change. I love you just the way you are. And Anthony said, the strangest thing happened. I relaxed. I came alive. And suddenly, I changed. And he ended it this way, the way I'll end it. I could not change until I found somebody who would love me whether I changed or not. You got somebody like that in Jesus Christ. You've got people like that right here. Don't change. Don't change because of any pressure. Just know that you're loved whether you do or not.